Man hört mich. Gut. Okay, it's 2 o'clock. Ready to start. So, first of all, welcome to my talk. My name is Fred. I'm one of the release engineers working at the Eclipse Foundation. My colleague Mikael is sitting in the back. And we also have support from our webmasters. Denis is here. And yeah, welcome to this last slot of this EclipseCon. And I'm going to talk about our next generation CI and how Eclipse projects will be able to build on our new build farm. So first of all, I'd like to give you a short view back in the history, where we started and where we are now. Back in 2009, we started with a single Hudson instance for all the projects. And at that point, this was maintained by the community. It gained some traction. Projects decided to also use it, and therefore some additional agents or slaves were added in 2010, and maintenance was switched over to the Eclipse IT team. In 2011 and 2012, even more slaves were added. There's even a dedicated master for the performance tests for the platform project, just to isolate it from any outside disturbances. And also in 2011, I guess most of you know that the Hudson project kind of went different ways. The Jenkins project was created due to some problems with Oracle at that time, and later in the year 2011, Hudson actually became an Eclipse project. In 2013, it became apparent that one single Hudson instance just did not cut it. There were too many projects, too many people wanted to build and test, and therefore a new initiative was created, the so-called Hudson instance per project, or in short, just HIP. With this, every Eclipse project got their own Hudson master instance. There was still the old shared instance for some of the slaves that were attached to, or there were some slaves attached for Windows and macOS, for example. And this served the community quite a while, until 2016, when it became apparent that the Hudson project was slowing down development and eventually stopped. There was no support anymore. And we had to look at different options, or to look at alternatives. And first thing that obviously came to mind was Jenkins, since they were closely related. And this was evaluated. One project was actually just testing it, and there were no bigger problems. And so we looked at mass migrating all our existing Hudson masters to Jenkins. Since it's been quite a while, since 2011, the configuration format changed to a certain degree, and so we had to create a little tool, which is also available on GitHub for the poor people that still use Hudson and might want to migrate to Jenkins at some point. And what it basically does is it transforms the configuration XML files with an XSL transformation to the new format. We also had to use some custom scripts just for our environment to transfer the files back and forth and to set up the new Jenkins instances. And this mass migration started in late 2017, and then was finished in early 2018, and we renamed the initiative from Hudson instance per project to Jenkins instance per project, or JIP. And as of right now, there are no more Hudson instances running. And since the Hudson project is basically dead, it will probably be archived soon. And that's where we kind of stand today. We have over 200 Jenkins master instances. They run across 10 physical machines, bare metal, and they're beefy machines. They have a lot of cores, lots of RAM, In addition, we still have some dedicated slaves for some projects, especially for special OS, like Windows and Mac, for UI tests and so on. But it became apparent that, well, it's easy to manage a couple of Jenkins masters, but it's quite hard, it takes a lot of time if you want to administrate hundreds of them, especially if you want to, let's say, upgrade due to a security issue, or if you want to upgrade a plugin across all of them, or change a setting, configuration file, and so on. So this is very time-consuming at the moment, and we don't want to spend all that time on administration. Instead, we want to add value for the community, for the Eclipse projects. For example, we want to provide digital signing. We want to make it easier to deploy and publish to Maven Central or to our local Nexus instance. We also want to provide support for statistic tools or static analysis tools, for example, SonarQube. And since a lot of Eclipse projects now use GitHub, we also want to improve the integration with GitHub. And I guess as lots of Eclipse projects suffer a bit from performance issues, we want to improve the performance. The hardware that we currently have is quite powerful, but we have to use it more efficiently and avoid that one machine is just running hot while the other one is idling. And this directly relates to better isolation between the projects. So for example, if one project is not really playing fair, they could suck up all the resources, all the CPU power on one machine, and other projects would suffer, which is not the way it should be. So yeah, we want to have better isolation. And also, to a certain degree, restrict the resources. We also want to make it easier to add additional resources. For example, if we buy a new machine and bring it in, we want to have as little downtime for projects as possible. Or we also want to add some cloud-based resources, for example, additional slaves. So this led us to the conclusion that we need the next generation CI. And after evaluating a couple of options, we decided on a duet solution based on CloudBees Core, which was formerly called CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise, based on Jenkins, and Red Hat OpenShift, which is the recommended cluster solution for CloudBees Core, which is based on Kubernetes. And I'm giving just a little overview of how that's structured. So before we had all the Jenkins masters individually, and they were independent, which was good to a certain degree, but as I said, it's quite hard to administer all of them. So now there's a kind of a master, which is called Operation Center, and it's connected to all the masters and allows cluster operations. So if we want to roll out a security update on all masters, if you want to upgrade them, if you want to install or deinstall a plugin, we can do that from the Operation Center, which saves us a lot of time and headaches. And another thing that changes until now, all the jobs that we're running on, most of the times they're running on masters, which is not a recommended solution, except for a few that run on some slaves. In the new infrastructure, all of these jobs won't run on the master. They will run on stateless build agents that are dynamically spun up that run on the cluster. At the same time, it would still be possible to add dedicated agents to each individual Jenkins master. So for example, if a project has some hardware in their office that they want to use or just add some extra power, then they can do that. And we also have the option to add shared agents at the Operation Center level that can then be shared by all the masters. So what's our status quo of the new CI? What we do is, if there's a new project requesting a new Jenkins instance, we only do it on the new infra. We don't provision JIPs on the old infra anymore. There are also early adopters, for example, Xtext. I guess Carsten is somewhere, who helped a lot with that and provided some valuable feedback to smooth the transition for the let's say the later adapters. We also had a rush of new Jakarta EE projects. It was around 40 that were added in the last couple of weeks, and they were all onboarded into the new infra, especially because projects like Classfish have quite huge demands in terms of resources and CPU power, and we could not do that with the old infra without breaking everyone else. In the beginning, we did have some stability issues with the cluster and also with CloudBees Core. This was, to a certain degree, also related to the fact that we are quite new to the Kubernetes environment and we have to learn on the go every day what problems there are and how to fix them. But we were happy, or we were really glad to have excellent support by CloudBees and really fast feedback that helped us to solve most of the issues. And as of now, the cluster is much more stable, and also, the CloudBees Jenkins Enterprise or CloudBees Core software is much more stable. So how do we migrate the old Jenkins instances to CloudBees Core? Unfortunately, there's no really built-in solution for mass migration of jobs in CloudBees Core. They only allow to move individual jobs, and this does not really cut it if we have 200 masters with, let's say, up to 100 jobs. This does not work. So again, we have to come up with a custom solution based on some scripts, and what we need to move is obviously the job configurations, the views, some credentials, and some Maven settings. And just to give you an overview again, this is the roadmap. We started in June with setting up our infrastructure around the cluster. We added the early adopters in August, and in October there was this, or end of September, there was this onboarding of all the Jakarta EE projects. This is now done, and we will soon evaluate the migration solution and try to onboard new projects. There is still one kind of blocker that we have to fix related to the Garrett trigger plugin, which is not working on the cluster solution right out of the box. And we have some workarounds that we still have to test, and then we will start to roll out that migration and hopefully start end of the year or beginning of next year. So with respect to performance and the built environments, we often get asked a couple of questions, and we want to answer them before we get actually to the questions part, and I also want to provide some best practices. So I guess most of you have the most important questions: why does my build take so long, and how can I make it faster? So as I mentioned, there are some restrictions on our side, on the infrastructure side. It is a shared environment where projects share resources, and the isolation between those projects is not as good as it could be. And so this is something that we want to solve with our new infrastructure. On the project side, we recommend to make the builds and tests more modular and chop them into pieces in the best case. I know that's not always possible, but it should be at least tried. And this makes it possible to also run builds or run tests in parallel. And another important thing that I also already mentioned was play fair. Don't use all the resources, since it could be you that is affected by that fact that someone just sucking up all the CPU. And you also should find a reasonable solution for being still for getting fast feedback from your builds, but at the same time maybe not build every minute your full project, or maybe not every 5 minutes, but maybe half an hour, or maybe even, I don't know, even less, as long as it is kind of reasonable. That helps a lot for all the projects. Another important question that is often asked is, what are Jenkins pipelines, and why and when should they be used? Who of you has not heard of pipelines, Jenkins pipelines, before? Okay, that's good. So I could actually skip the next slide, even though I still will talk about it. Just to sum it up quickly, it basically allows you to store your job configuration in your repo, be it on GitHub or on Gerrit. And it allows you to link your configurations to your code, so it's always in the right state. It allows you to have a history and to roll back some changes. And yeah, to a certain degree, that's easier in a file, in the Jenkins file that's in your repository, than in the UI of Jenkins. There are two different kinds of syntaxes. There's the scripted pipeline and the declarative pipeline. The scripted pipeline is basically using the Groovy DSL. If you're using declarative pipelines, you don't have to know Groovy. You can do it a bit more declarative, as it's in the name. And another important thing is that pipelines are definitely recommended for Docker-based builds. There are some ways to do it also with freestyle jobs, but in general, it's easier to do it with pipelines. Which brings us to the next question: can I finally run Docker-based builds? We got that question really a lot. And yes, indeed, you can do that in the future on our new build infrastructure, with emphasis on running Docker-based builds. As of now, we don't provide the possibility to build your own Docker images. And for now, as long as it is on Docker Hub, you can use your custom Docker-based builds or Docker-based images that provide all the tools, all the dependencies that you need for a project. And this does, yeah, it's easier for you to have that and to change it on your own, and it's easier for us because, yeah, we can do that independently. Finally, one other question that that we often see in context to the new infrastructure: what do I need to do for the migration as the Eclipse project? And in general, as I mentioned, we will move all the files, but there will be some requirements for adapting the job configurations to the new environment of having stateless agents that are just starting fresh with every build. Nothing is, apart from the logs and from some artifacts that you save, nothing is saved. Everything is just vanishing after the build. And so this will require some adaptations, but we will be happy to support you. And since we had some trailblazers like Xtext, we already know some of the problems or issues that could come up, and we created a wiki page to help you with that. So to sum it up again, the best practices are kind of in the answers that I gave already. You should have modular builds and tests, chop them up into pieces if possible, and use parallel builds. Play fair and don't be a resource hog. To share the resources and be reasonable in how often you build. Another best practice is to put your configuration in the code with the help of Jenkins pipelines. And yeah, in the future also use Docker. As I said, it helps us by not having to do every change that you want, but you can do it yourself. And you also find more of the best practices on our wiki. And as I said, some of the let's say, problems that we already found are answered in the FAQ part of the Jenkins page on the wiki. With that, I'd like to ask you if you have any questions. Yes, please.
Will it be possible with a new cloud-based thing to manage your own chip, meaning installing additional plugins yourself?
So the question was, will it be possible to manage your own chip instance in the new infrastructure? because in the old infrastructure, if a project requested that, we gave them admin rights and they could do whatever they want with their JIP instance to a certain degree. We are currently not planning to do that to make it easier for us to roll out upgrades to administer all the instances at once. But this is, I guess, not set in stone. If there are some requirements, we can certainly talk about that, and we'll find a solution for, let's say, that's good for us and for the whole community, I guess. Yes?
Is there a way for the Garrett messages triggered to change the links to the Blue Ocean UI?
So the question was about Garrett and Blue Ocean. Blue Ocean, for those of you that don't know, I guess everyone knows, but it's the new, let's say, hip UI of Jenkins. I'm actually not aware of this. If there's a way to do that, I haven't tried it personally, and yeah, I would have to Google that myself. I'm sorry. Oh, okay. So in that case, I guess we can certainly, if you request it, we can certainly enable that. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes.
It's really great to see you can run Docker-based builds now. It's a very good experience with other cases. And you mentioned that building Docker images was not yet possible. And I wanted to ask if there is something which is on the horizon, or whether this is uncertain because of security problems.
So yeah, the question was about if there's a way in the future to also build Docker images on a new infrastructure. So it is planned to look at that, and we will obviously try to provide that that solution or that that option. But as you said, there are some security issues that we have to look at, and we will. As I said, from the beginning, you will be able to download all the Docker-based images, and we will need to run some security tests on them in certain way, and maybe even build our own Docker registry, just to be sure that there are no, let's say, Bitcoiner Docker images that use up all our infrastructure. Yes? That's a good question.
Inside a Docker image, and that is on the user, like as an unprivileged user, and then it's much easier for the infrastructure to make sure isolation is working.
Exactly. Yeah. So yeah, just to sum it up quickly, there is, and we have actually a restriction on that because as in OpenShift. For security reasons, it's not possible to run as a root user in a Docker image. You run as an, let's say, semi-randomly user, and this is a restriction also that applies to images that you use from the outside. There has to be some changes if the image by default uses the root user, so they have to be adapted. Any other questions? Okay, so, yep, sure.
So, did I understand this correctly, that if we have some hardware laying around in our office, we can attach that as a build slave to our JIP instance?
To repeat the question, can we add some additional hardware that we have lying around in some office to the Jenkins masters? Yes, you do. For example, the OpenJ9 project does that to a large degree already, with even on the old infrastructure. They have a lot of slaves, especially for, let's say, some environments, some hardware environments that we cannot provide. Yeah, you can do that.
And then if I have Docker daemon running on that, can I then
I'm pretty sure you can. Mikael can correct me if I... Yes. So yeah, you're free to do what you want on your environment. Yeah, you can run Docker and Docker and Docker. Anyways, okay, so just to sum it up, to the takeaways from this talk, we want to do less administration, and we want to focus on providing more tools, more services to our community. And in our new infrastructure, we hope to better utilize our existing hardware and provide more options for scaling, for adding new machines and more cloud-based resources. And as I mentioned, moving to stateless build agents will require some adaptations from the projects in some ways, but we are happy to help. And as I said, there's some FAQs already that are accessible. And if you have any other questions, then please send us an email, or even better, open up a Bugzilla issue, or come to us at a conference and talk to us, and maybe we can fix it. And yeah, last thing, thank you very much, and please evaluate the talks on EclipseCon.org. As I was made aware by my colleague, if you click +1, don't forget to hit the submit button. Don't care about zeros or -1, you don't have to click submit them, but if you click +1, click the submit button. Thank you very much.